Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Savage Bruski here with a bit of a different video. It's the 4th of July. I find myself with a little bit of time off. Happy Independence Day to my fellow Americans.
My fellow Americans, I just want to say, if you're not rolling dice and playing games, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you.
Well, I noticed I don't have a lot of content when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons or TTRPGs. And someone asked me the other day, I piped up and just said, yeah, I've played, Battletech and Warhammer and D&D. And they were like, yeah, I want to get into D&D. And I was like, yeah, No, I don't have videos for that, really. I've made terrain, I've made a couple one-shots, I've done, various things on the podcast, but I really don't have advice for DMs, dungeon masters, or game masters, or for players, for that matter, that are just starting out. And I have played a fair bit. I've done mostly D&D, 3rd Ed, 3.5, a little bit of 5th, and some Pathfinder. I'm recently getting into Castles and Crusades. I've started reading up on that a bit more. So I've kind of played the field, but I'm not the most experienced guy in the world. So full disclosure, I'm about to give you 3 tips for DMs and GMs and 3 tips for players that I find would make the game more enjoyable and make it a little more workable. And this is what I would have told myself starting out. So right off the bat, tip number 1 for DMs, do not skip or don't avoid the pre-made modules. Mostly, I'm going to be referencing D&D here. This is in the form of the missions, the scenarios, the stories that you get out of a box or a book that are pre-written for you. You don't have to think up the monsters, you don't have to think up the story, you don't have to come up with the traps or the maps or anything else going on. These are all pre-made for you, okay? Great example is the 5e starter set with Lost Mines of Phandelver. This is considered one of those really, really great starter modules for new players and for new DMs. It's not crazy hard. There's not a zillion and 5 environments. There's nothing you can really throw at the players that they couldn't reasonably handle. It's a fairly good break into the game. And there are other ones like that. Sunless Citadel is one that I loved playing back in 3rd Ed. It's actually been revamped in Tales of the Yawning Portal for 5 Ed. It's actually a fairly good starter, and there's others out there, okay? Even as you level up and as you go on, you might, as a dungeon master, get the idea that you need to have a really well-crafted or really perfected module. You're not going to start off with the ability to write these perfectly. Okay, and you might do something that you think is really awesome, and then you actually put your players into that scenario, and maybe it doesn't turn out as well, or it's too hard, or it's too easy, or they solve it a totally different way. You never know. So my advice to the DM, point number 1, is don't skip using pre-made modules. They will break you into the game. They will really give you the experience to know how to write stuff later on. Tip number 2, protect the integrity of your table. People are going to hear me say that and instantly get a little bit triggered and think I'm talking about gatekeeping your players, and that's not what I'm referring to here. There were times when you would run into a rules scenario or a situation where it would be questionable if something would work or would fly or would be workable. There was a game we were playing and we had a character that was fairly close to death and we were in the middle of nowhere. And we weren't particularly high level. We didn't have a bunch of we weren't into rituals and we weren't into the high-end healing strata, if you will. And it was kind of like, okay, this guy's literally about 3 seconds from dying. Real world, he would be like, medevac or die. Is the DM gonna, Deus Ex Machina something into the situation that allows him to live? Or is he going to add to the healing spells? Or is he just going to go, well, that's kind of where he's at, he gets too much sun and he's going to die of, exposure, or he's going to, hear an insult and die of emotional damage. Well, the DM made a decision on that, and I'm not going to go into what it was, but that was his decision. And the problem we ran into was in a later module, almost the exact same thing happened, and the same DM, reversed the decision. Problem was, at that point, the players were a little bit like, okay, well, that worked the one time. Why didn't it work this time? Why did that change? You have to have a level of consistency with how you're running the games, okay? You're the god of the world. You are the storyteller. You are the person presenting the scenario and what the players see and hear and find, what the NPCs do, what the enemies and the monsters do. That's all you as a DM, okay? So if you rule that a certain situation is a certain way, don't go back on that. Don't change that. Okay? Don't take something that your players are now used to from you as a DM and completely upend it so as to make the game unplayable. And don't think that you're giving them a good surprise or you're giving them something that'll shake them up. Okay? Your job there is also to be the purveyor of the fun. And the players are going to generate some of that themselves. But in your decisions and how you're adhering to rules and how you're adhering to scenarios, you can make or break that as well. So just keep in mind the decisions you make, the calls you make, and what the impact is for your table with them. Point number 3. Be a DM. Don't be a genie. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about here. My friends and I were playing a module, I think it was 3.5e, and we were all low-level characters. We were a fairly motley crew. We had a fighter, we had a cleric, we had a ranger. I think I was a rogue. And we rapidly found ourselves in a situation where we were going through a dungeon. And we got through and we basically found information leading to sort of what the big bad evil guy was planning for a kingdom nearby. And our story took us back to the kingdom to warn the king. And wrapping up the session basically after, we'd done 2 or 3 sessions on the same story, and this is a homebrew module. This wasn't anything pre-made. Suddenly, we're all level 2-3 characters, and we find ourselves, the king has granted you trained griffins as your steeds, and you find yourselves in finely worked armor, and your weapons have all been magicked and upgraded to plus blah-de-blah. Okay, we hadn't particularly earned it. We hadn't particularly done everything, but one of the players had, we found out later, he kind of talked to the DM and says, man, this is boring. We don't have anything magical. We don't have blah, blah, blah. When I say don't be a genie, I mean, you're not there necessarily to grant everybody's wishes. The idea is not to cater to your party at all times and make it so that, oh, wow, you really want a magical sword? Oh, you find a magical sword. Don't feel, in other words, like you have to give in to every wish and demand and everything that they whine about or that they might want or that they feel they're missing or whatever. Take it in stride. And if you really hear complaints that the way you're gaming or what they're running into is really bland or something, make note of it and maybe change it up in the future. Add some little wrinkle if you want to. But don't feel like you suddenly have to, magically out of nowhere you have weapons and armor and steeds and you're leading an army and you suddenly just roll a dice and anything but a 1 kills the guy utterly, okay? You're not there to do that. And if you're feeling like you have to play that way, you really have to look at the players and what's going on and adjudicate the situation a little bit differently, okay? Don't be a genie, don't grant wishes. Now, for the players, 3 tips again, and this is from my perspective, not crazy experience, not knowing everything obviously, but these are 3 things that I thought of as a player. 1, use the basic classes when you're starting out, okay? I'm talking about the player classes. Some people get really enamored with being a bard or being an assassin or being a paladin or being a ranger. And these are classes that take a level of sophistication to play at times. A paladin has all kinds of rules. They have to conform to the strictures of the deity they serve. They're also a fighter, which means they're going to be geared to combat more than certain things. Rangers typically have a preferred enemy. They will take on one of a couple combat styles. They'll take on other archetypes as they level up. It's not the point that it's too complicated for the player. That's not what I'm saying. But when you're starting out, when you're new, don't be afraid to use the basic no-frills party. Now, what am I talking about, okay? Your basic fighter. Not your barbarian, not your paladin, not your warlord, your fighter, okay? You are hack and slash. That's what you do. And at times, that's very needful, okay? Cleric. Somebody's got to heal you dummies. Somebody's got to be able to turn undead. Somebody's got to, be a little bit tanky. Wizard, you're going to need spells. You're going to need magic. You're going to need someone who has an understanding of lore at times. Rogues, you will run into traps. You will run into adversaries that are better killed with a rapier than with a broadsword from the back instead of the front. You will want cunning. You will want someone with a little bit of intrigue and a little bit of dash to them. Don't be afraid to run these as your first party. okay? They're simple to play. They break you into all the mechanics. You can do everything you need to do for the most part with those classes. So don't feel like you have to jump in and play something that demands a high level of understanding the character and understanding the lore and playing along with additional sort of rules and caveats. You don't have to do that. Just play basic until you really know what you're doing and then do anything you want. Point number 2. You will need brain exactly as often as you will need brawn. Okay, case in point. I'm in a dungeon, I'm playing a game with a friend of mine, and he was I forget the name of it, I think it was Dragonkin or Dragonborn, whatever it was. It's basically the giant lizard character. And he was being a warlord, so he's all armored up and tanky and beefy. And I'm playing a 2-blade ranger. I'm more agility, I'm more combat, I'm more problem solving, all that kind of thing. And we find ourselves in a dungeon where we have to cross a path with basically a bunch of, axes doing this as you walk across them. I naturally go about the situation and start trying to figure out if there's a button or a lever, or if I can see anything in the room. And sure enough, all the way at the end of the path there's a button on the wall. So I start, bow and arrow and trying to throw knives at it. And unfortunately, I am rolling ass that day. So I have like 5 knives sticking out of the wall. One of them even bounced back and hit me for a point of damage. My arrows are all missing, and my friend is just getting exasperated by this point. He goes, screw this, and decides to just body charge the pendulum and try to break them. Basically, he ended up getting through. I just ended up, having to recollect all my knives and arrows and down a point or 2 of health. Conversely, we ran into a situation a little while later where we were surrounded by a bunch of baddies, and he's just hack and slashing his way at them. But unfortunately, they're enchanted to resist damage, and it wasn't necessarily going too well for him. He was close to dying. We ended up healing him. He was totally fine, but he was close to dying. And the solution ended up being something in the room that was used as a natural item against them. I think there was there were like vials of this potion or vials of this acid, and you could throw it at them and it would actually dissolve them really easily. Just ended up working out. So don't think of every situation as combat. Don't also close the door to thinking of it as a puzzle or something that you solve through dialogue. Okay, you will, with very few exceptions, run into a mixed bag of both. Okay, and when I say very few exceptions, there are dungeons that are very combat oriented. There are those that are extremely puzzle oriented. Okay, if you've heard of the Tomb of Horrors, this is basically one giant brain teaser with not a ton of combat to it. A lot of things that can kill you, a lot of things that can really mess with you. Ending up butt naked at the start of the adventure is definitely something funny to behold, but it's not going to kill you, obviously. So just be aware of that. You're going to need both. Don't think you're going to combat through everything. Don't think you're going to problem solve everything. Point number 3, don't get super attached to your characters. There's 2 things about this. Number 1, whatever your stance is on character death, how many saves should be in place, or should the DM fudge the dice rolls, I'm not even talking about that. But 2 things are going to happen inevitably as you play games. 1, characters are going to die, or they're going to lose things, or they're going to break equipment or lose abilities. It's going to happen at some point that people will get injured. They will get, not necessarily crippled, but maimed or damaged in some way, or their favorite sword will break and they won't get another one right away, or God forbid they die. If you take that seriously and you take a big loss on that, your enjoyment for the game is going to suffer. The second thing that occurs is eventually you tap out. If you have a good DM and a good group and you play through adventures and you survive a lot of what's going on, eventually it just gets to the point where it's like, oh yeah, this thing, I can't be killed, I can't be defeated, I know all the lore, I can do this spell that basically just nukes the dungeon very easily. Not really, but you know what I mean. The point is, you get to the point where you have to rewrite a character anyway, and you go, man, that was fun, I'm just going to do the same thing again now. Well, that's not very fun for you, because then you end up taking the same paths, making the same character with a different name, possibly a slightly different mustache, and you're bored with the whole thing after a couple of sessions. Don't be afraid to change up your class. Don't be afraid to change up your race. Do something totally different. You've been playing fighters the last 3 campaigns. Now you're going to play a wizard. Now you're going to play a rogue. Now you're going to play a bard or a monk or something like that. Don't be afraid to do different things, and don't get so attached to one type or one style that you play every single game the same way. It'll be a little more fun for you. You'll get a lot more out of it. You'll learn more. And eventually, when you circle around to being a DM, you'll know more about how your players are going to respond to things, how they're going to react to things, what they're going to do given the classes and races they are. So those are my tips. I really hope you found those useful. Again, I don't know it all. This is the area I'm probably weaker on, but these are the things that I observed I found to be truths in my game circle. These are the things that made sense for me. So I hope it's useful. Have a good one, you guys. To the Americans out there, happy Independence Day. Catch you on the next one.